Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Lunch and Learn workshop. This is a shorter version of our workshop. We'll want to make sure that we give you a lot of value in just an hour. This is a Lunch and Learn version of this GMAT workshop. And for some of you, I know some of you are in Europe or in Asia. It might be later at night, so we are also so grateful that you were able to join us. I'll talk about some of the longer workshops that you can take with us as well towards the end of this class. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of information about you as well. I wanted to make sure that over this short time that we're going to be together, about an hour, you really get the most out of this class. And I want to show you a couple of questions, a couple of different GMAT strategies that you could use to help you get a high GMAT score. And of course, there's only so much that we can cover in an hour. And if we never see each other again, I want to make sure that you can walk away with a plan of where you can go from here if you're really interested in getting a high score. And then towards the end of our workshop, I will be joined by my colleague, Teresa Perez from the Smith School of Business. This is one of the top ranked schools in Canada that is going to share with you what are some of the things you might need to get into a top international business school. How might you put together an application? What are some of the things to keep in mind outside of the GMAT? So it's going to be a little bit of both, but we'll focus primarily on the GMAT today. And I want to begin by taking you a little outside of a comfort zone. Now, I know you're probably sitting at home quite comfortable now. And I don't mean being physically uncomfortable. What I mean is that if you want to learn something, we have to get slightly uncomfortable. We have to learn things perhaps that we haven't done before. And some of these things, the first time you're going to look at them, you'll say, I don't know about that. I'm not really quite sure if this is how I'm used to doing things. But don't worry. The strategies I'm going to show you, these are the strategies that will help you get a high GMAT score. So let's get a little outside of your comfort zone and let's do a real GMAT question. This is a question from one of the past exams, and this is a critical reasoning question. The question is going to explain exactly what you need to do. There's a question, there's a passage. The question is right under the passage. I will show you the answer choices later on as well. But I want to begin by giving you approximately 30 seconds or 45 seconds to read this passage and try to make sense of it. Okay, as it's now been approximately 45 seconds, I want to ask you a simple question. And if you do have questions to me, by the way, I've noticed that some of you are raising your hand. Please put your question in the chat box. This is how we're going to be able to interact. I want to ask you, just please throw it in the chat box. So please put things in the chat box. Unfortunately, here it is not possible to unmute yourself in this workshop just because of the number of people in this workshop. There are some limitations. In our normal class, that would be possible. But here, if you can just put your question in the chat box, I will see it right away and I'll be able to answer your question. So please share with me in the chat box, during this time that I've given you, how many times did you read this passage? Okay, yeah, some of you are saying twice, some of you are saying 3 times. And after reading this passage 2 to 3 times, could you honestly say that you understand everything about this passage? Okay, and most of you are saying no, not really, absolutely none. Some of you are saying, well, 40 to 50%. All right, well, let me show you the answer choices. Maybe once you see the answer choice, things are going to clear out and it's going to be a lot easier for you. So let me show you the answer choices. I'll give you another 30 seconds or so, and I'm actually going to ask you to choose what would be the right answer for you. All right. Well, we have answers for every single answer choice. So let's see which one's right, because so far people are voting for A, B, C, D, and E. Well, let's see. Let's go back to the passage. This is a passage that's asking us that there's some statement in a bold, and the question was, what role does this statement play in this argument? So obviously we're presented with an argument, and in case you don't know who's an ethicist, just in case you've never met a person by this profession, this is somebody who studies ethics for a living. So kind of like a professor who studies ethics. And if you read this passage, it's really easy to completely get lost in whatever this person was trying to say. That's why many people, after even reading it multiple times, still don't really understand what's going on. But the question wasn't about ethics, or it wasn't even about understanding what's going on. Rather, it was about answering the question. This is a multiple choice exam. We have a question, we have 5 answer choices. In order for us to answer this question in boldface, about the statement in boldface, all we need is to understand this. As it begins by saying it would be a mistake to say something, so somebody made a mistake, or what we sometimes call a false claim or a faulty claim. So somebody made a claim, and in the author's opinion, that claim is faulty. All right? Now, if somebody is saying these other people are wrong, but I'm right, in the argument, we need to support that claim by providing some evidence. So what's coming afterwards, this part in bold, is actually a piece of evidence. And notice the words that this evidence would begin with. It would be for although it is true, and then there's some words that perhaps we don't really need to understand that well. So what we've discovered so far, without getting into ethics at all, we've discovered that the author begins by making a claim that some other people are wrong, but he or she is right, and then supports that claim by providing a piece of evidence that the author agrees with, right? The author says, this is true. So the question was about this part, the part in bold, the part in the middle, and that's what we're going to try to answer. So let's go back to our answer choices. I would like to start with C, because among the people who voted, this is actually the more popular answer. So C says the part in bold is a faulty claim. Well, what's a faulty claim? There certainly was a faulty claim. The author believes that some people are making a faulty claim, but this wasn't the part in bold. The part in bold was something the author agreed with. Remember, he said, or she said, well, although this is true. So that's why C is not the right answer. Or let's look at D. D says it is according to the argument, a commonly held opinion that is nevertheless false. Again, false, but the author said it's true. Let's look at E. It reports an observation that the argument claims is false. We can stop reading right now. We know the author said it's true. So see, again, we're doing what the GMAT wants us to do, which is focus on answering the questions, not on understanding what this passage is saying necessarily. So now we're down to two answer choices, A and B. A says, and I'm going to start with A, not because it comes first, but because it's shorter. So A says, it is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. All right. Now, was there a claim? Yes, it was, but it was at the beginning. That part in bold was not the claim. It was support for that claim. That's what we've determined. Therefore, we could reject A. B has to be the right answer. And at this point, I'm not even going to read it. That is the only answer choice that is left. That's why A is out, B is the right answer. So if you're thinking about this question, it brings us to an important point, and that is what really separates the 500 scores from 700 plus scores. And that is, we can get that question from, or the answer to that question from the GMAT, the organization that actually makes the test. So the GMAT says, rather than testing your knowledge of business or any other subject matter, so ethics including, the GMAT exam measures higher order reasoning skills, skills that matter in the management classrooms and in the 21st century workplace. So it's really all about these higher order reasoning skills. That's what the GMAT is all about. It's not about knowing ethics. It's not about memorizing things. That's why this test is going to be different from almost any test that we've done before. Now, for many of us, we believe, because that's what we've been taught in school, that knowledge is power. I don't know about you, but I certainly learned this from my high school teachers. They told me that if I learn this chemistry lesson or this biology lesson, when I grow up, I'll be powerful because I'll have all that knowledge, right? And I like using analogies, and you may have seen me using different analogies. So I'd like to give you an analogy of learning how to swim. Well, if you want to learn how to swim, you have a couple of options. Option one is you can read a book on swimming. It's going to tell you exactly what to do, exactly how to move your arms, your legs, exactly how to breathe, exactly how to move the water around you, what to wear, and so on. But how likely are we to use all of that all at once when we jump into a pool and try to compete against, let's say, Michael Phelps, who may have never read that book? Not very likely, because knowledge itself isn't power. What is power is our ability to use the knowledge. Skills are power. Knowledge is not. So if you want to prepare for this test, that brings us to that whole idea of preparing for this sort of a skills-based test. And I'll give you the exact strategy of how to do it in just a couple of minutes. It's really going to be all about jumping into a pool, and it's going to be all about swimming, not just reading a book on swimming. And ideally, when I jump into a pool first, I don't want to swim myself. I want to swim with somebody who can show me how to swim, hopefully give me some coaching. And even Michael Phelps had a coach all throughout his sports career. So that's why it's important to work with somebody. And I'm really glad that you came here today and came to learn some of the strategies. So I have a privilege of being your coach for the next 45 minutes or so. Now, tell you a little bit about myself. I've done the GMAT myself a number of years ago, and it was my first attempt, and I scored 750, which was a 99th percentile at that time. It's 98th percentile now. And I'm showing this to you not to impress you. It impresses me, quite honestly, because I wasn't really preparing very much, and yet I was able to get a very high score. And what I realized after the fact, after I've done my MBA and I've done my GMAT, my MBA, and then I got into a corporate world, what I realized as I met many other people who did really well in the GMAT, that there was something in common. There was something between them. It wasn't really about the background. It wasn't really about coming from any specific sort of educational or cultural background. It was a lot more about working hard, taking the time to prepare, being dedicated, and really developing these skills, more like street smart as opposed to book smart. And I wanted to give you just a quick quote from one of our recent students who came to our course. Within 3 months, she was able to improve from 380, which is a terrible score by all measures. It's less than the bottom 10%. She was able to improve to 700, which is an amazing score, in less than 3 months, or about 3 months. It took her 13 weeks. And notice in her comments, she was saying, throughout the course, I learned how to think outside the box. I learned how to manage time and stress. I learned how to think like a CEO, and the instructors supported me along the way. So that really encompasses the entire journey. And if there's only one thing you want to take away, it's probably this quote from Daria that's telling you, here's what you will need to really succeed on the test. It's not about memorizing things. It's not about memorizing a bunch of formulas. It's really about developing these skills, and it's about having people around you who are really interested in your success and who are going to guide you, help you along the way. This could be your brother or sister, or a friend who did really well on the GMAT, or it could be a professional GMAT instructor. Now, when it comes to doing well on the GMAT, and we're talking about the skills, but how is the GMAT actually evaluating these skills? Well, when you look at the structure of the test, most people, and I speak with a lot of people one-on-one, and if you are interested in speaking one-on-one, I'd love for us to connect as well. You can just send me an email or book a consultation on our website. But when I speak with most people, they would say, yeah, I know the GMAT is a test of math and English. In fact, just this morning, I was speaking with one of our clients who is going to join our course in March, who was saying that I tried the GMAT, I studied for a little bit, and I just thought it's about math and English. I went for the test and I didn't do well at all. So now I need to learn something new. So what do I need to learn? And the quickest answers to this question is, if you look at the names of the sections, you would notice that there's a word reasoning in 3 of them. Reasoning is a skill. It is a test of logic, just exactly like you're saying. It's about understanding, it's about developing your comfort level with the process. It's about, and both math and verbal are about logic. In fact, there's a lot more commonalities between these 2 tests. There are differences. Quantitative reasoning is really all about reasoning with numbers, and verbal reasoning is all about reasoning without numbers. That's really it. And integrated reasoning is integrating all of it, including some of your real world experience, to again evaluate how well you can reason through the problems, right? So that's what it's all about. And notice the timing here as well. You have 120 seconds per question on the quantitative reasoning section, and 108 seconds per question on the verbal reasoning section. So that question that I've given you at the beginning of this seminar, you're supposed to do this question in 1 minute and 48 seconds. And one of the things about this test also is that this test is following an adaptive algorithm. What this means is that the test will get harder or easier as you go along. So if you are doing well, your test is going to get harder. Right? And that's a little bit different from some of the tests we've done in college, where if I go for a physics exam, I wish I get an easy question, because that's how I can get an easy A. But here on the GMAT, that's not going to work, because you have a number of questions and they do get harder or they do get easier. And we hope they're going to get harder, because that's the way for us to get a higher score. Now, we get asked a lot, can I even take the test right now? And the answer is absolutely. In most parts of the world, now you have an option to take 2 different types of tests. There's a regular GMAT and there's an online GMAT, which is almost the same as a regular GMAT. You're saving a little bit of money because you're actually not going to the physical test center. But a lot of the other limitations on how often you can take the test, how many times, they apply to both the regular and the online GMAT. The online GMAT does not have an essay, which means it's a little bit of a shorter exam. It's 3 hours long instead of 3.5 hours. So I guess you're getting a $25 discount for not writing an essay as well. And that test is available 24/7. You can take it twice, only twice in your lifetime. The regular exam could be taken up to 8 times. And that exam, as of right now, is available until April this year. But there might be additional windows opening up depending on how the pandemic pans out. And then until the regular GMAT exam could be offered with full exam center capacity, which is not likely going to happen anytime soon, we know that the online exam should continue to be available. Now, we talked about the exam scores a little bit, and I know many of you are coming here and you might be interested in getting an exam in the 700 plus range. Well, just to give you an idea, everybody who takes the test, the average score is 560, and 700 is the 88th percentile on the exam. So just so that we understand what does it actually mean to get a 700 plus score. And if you are applying to some of the top schools, let's say if you're shooting for some of the top schools in the United States, then pretty much all of the top 20 schools will have average scores above 700. If you're going for top schools in Canada, most of the top schools in Canada will have average scores somewhere from 650 and above. And depending on what country you're applying from, some of the countries have a lot of applicants. So if you want to compete specifically with those applicants and get an edge, you might need to get a higher score. There's some of the countries where traditionally the GMAT scores are a little bit higher. So I wanted to just do a fun, quick exercise and ask you, what is really the percentile of the people who get in scores of 700 or more? If 700 is the 88th percentile, how many people actually get scores of 700 or more? What do you think? Just put it in a chat box. I'll give you my answer. And that is 0.3%. Now, if you thought it's 12%, you're forgiven, because that's what most people think. However, it depends on the percent of what people we take. Well, if we take the percent of all people who take the test, indeed, it would be 12%. But I wanted to give you an interesting statistics just to put things in perspective. And that is the official statistics, again, from the GMAT. We belong to a very small circle of test prep organizations that the GMAT headquarters every year. And in 2020, unfortunately, it didn't happen, but it happened every year before that, where we exchange some ideas, we get some perspectives from the people who make the test. And here's what we've heard just in the last year. Approximately 7 million people a year will decide to begin preparing for the test. Of them, 2 million people will actually register online on MBA.com. But of these 2 million people, only 10% will then proceed to booking their real test. And of these people, only 24,000, approximately a year, will get a score of 700 or more. So if you again, putting things into perspective, if somebody just wakes up in the morning and decides, well, I'd like to study for the GMAT. This is a really important test for me. Let me go and purchase a book. Let me go to download some resources. Let me come to maybe a GMAT class. Only 1 in 300 people will get a score of 700 at the end. And actually, 97% of these people will not even do the real test. I found it quite a shocking statistics. And the reason why most people are either not serious about studying, or they just don't know how to study properly for this test. Because most people would prepare for this test the way that they prepare for any other test in a college or university or high school. They're just going to hit the books and review. Right? And in fact, many books will have the word review on them, or guide, or even many GMAT prep courses will have the word review in the name of the course. Because that kind of assumes that all we're doing is reviewing what we already know. But if you've done any GMAT studies by now, you will realize it's not about reviewing, it's about learning some new things. Right? That's why books are great, and there's so many of them. but it's also so easy to feel overwhelmed because mostly books teach us the theory, some of the formulas, and they give us practice questions. But there's actually a very important step that is missing in the books. And that's why I imagine you might have come here as well. And I'll actually share with you what is that missing step and what are the processes. So the question is, how do I then master these skills? What are these steps? Well, the books are important. And I want to use an analogy of another skills-based exam, which is an exam of getting your driver's license. While at first, if you want to get licensed, drive a car, you do absolutely have to read a book. That's where it all starts. We need to know some rules. But if we want to do well, and if we want to, let's say, be a high performance driver, then we do need to learn some skills so that we can beat other people on the racetrack or just simply be a good driver. So for us to master these skills, we got to go through 3 steps. Step number 1, read the book. And relating this to the GMAT, that will mean we have to review our theory. Well, the GMAT is not really about knowing things. It's about having the right skill set. But if I don't know what's a fraction or what's an integer or what's a noun or what's a verb, it's almost impossible to do well on the GMAT. So reviewing this basic theory is really important. In fact, I'm going to relate things to how we prepare our students for the class, just so that we know what we believe in. And we've proven that it works on working with many, many students for many years. Before you even join our class, we're going to give you exercises to do. And the exercises are not just simply going to be reading a book and memorizing a formula. Like, honestly, I don't care whether you know a formula. All I care is whether you can use it. And if you forgot a formula but you can still use it, it doesn't really matter to me because there'll be ways around that formula. So that's going to be step number 1. There'll be lots of exercises to test whether you know the theory, the basic foundations. That's step number 1. Step number 2, once you've learned the basic rules of the road, you got into a car. But remember, you did not get into a car by yourself. You got into a car with somebody, maybe your parent, your older sibling, or maybe there was an instructor. There was somebody there, and the reason why, it wasn't because something was wrong with you, and some of the people are saying, well, you know, and even sometimes our friends are saying, excuse my language, sometimes they'll say, well, are you stupid? You can't prepare for the GMAT by yourself. That's really not helpful because it's kind of like saying, well, couldn't you just learn how to drive a car by yourself? It usually doesn't work because we know that anytime we're going to try something new, we are going to make mistakes. And if we want to succeed, we need to learn some good strategies, hopefully from somebody who knows how to use them or how to drive a car well, knows how to teach us, but also most importantly, we need to get some feedback. So I'd like to invite you to think about who this person would be. And for many of you, it's going to be different. For some of you, it may be me or some of our instructors. For some of you, again, maybe your friend or maybe somebody else. But I'd like to really encourage you to think about who would that be. Somebody you can trust, somebody who has an interest in your success, and somebody who's going to guide you along the way and give you honest feedback, what you really need to hear. And also somebody who's going to keep you safe and make sure you don't give up. And this is why there was somebody who mentioned that success on the GMAT comes from a lot of practice. And that's going to be really important. There's an important step also, and that is we do need to learn the best strategies up front. Because whatever we practice, we're going to ingrain this as a habit. You may have heard practice makes perfect. That is actually not true. That's a little white lie. Practice makes a habit. If we practice something a lot, we're going to develop a habit of doing that thing, whatever we practice. So if we practice good habits, then we're going to develop a good habit. If we practice bad habits, bad strategies, we're going to develop a bad habit. So before we do a lot of practice, before we jump into a pool and swim a lot, we got to learn how to swim first. And when we practice, we're going to really try to iron out our strategies, make sure we're really comfortable using them. And the goal of practice is to get better, not to practice. So there's a process of learning, of getting better. And part of this process is in making mistakes, because we learn from our mistakes. In order to get better, we have to make these mistakes and learn from them. That's why when you come to our class, there'll be lots of homework where you're going to be practicing what you've learned in the class. But inside the class, the instructor is going to make sure that as we are learning the strategies, you are going to experience by yourself what it's like to be successful in a question, what it's like to fall into a trap, and what it's like to make a mistake, what it's like to be stuck, because you need to know how to deal with all of these situations. Remember, it's not about memorizing things, it's about having the right skill set. And one of them is, how do I manage my time? Or what do I do if I'm stuck? All of that is what's going to contribute to developing these good habits. And these habits are going to probably be even more important than just simply remembering a formula. I'm actually going to show you a question in 5 minutes where you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But I want to just really quickly do a shameless plug, because I know some of you are thinking, well, how will I study and where will I get all of these resources? And you're going to have to get them somewhere, and you're going to have to get this coaching somewhere. So we'd love for you to come and study with us. Our program is more comprehensive than almost any other program you can find out there. You're going to be in a class for about 60 hours over either 6 or 12 weeks. You're going to be in a fairly small class that's very interactive. You could actually unmute yourself. You could ask any questions. Just today we can't really do this just because these classes tend to be much larger. But in a real class, we use a different technology, which is fully two-way interactive. And the best part about this program is we'll be working with you until you're done. So if it takes you 2 months to get a 700 plus score, that's great. If it takes you 5 months, that's okay. We know you're dedicated, you're committed. That's the most important thing for us, because for us, our reputation is really important. And when you join us, our reputation is on the line. That's why we want you to succeed. We have some early bird discounts. If you go to our website, adminmaster.com/offer, you can find them. We have a class that's starting in approximately 2 weeks. It's getting quite full, but we still have a $100 early bird discount if you'd like to join that class. And then the following class will be on the weekend. So depending on your time zone, one or the other might work really well for you. And for that class, tomorrow is actually the last day of the $200 early bird discount. Just to give you an idea of what you're getting with the class, you're getting about 60 hours, but actually more, because you can repeat classes for free anytime within a year. We'll give you access to an adaptive online platform with a huge question bank, lots of practice questions. You are going to be getting 3 hours of private tutoring. That's on us. We will supply you with the GMAT books. We'll even throw in a free resume review. And that's about, that's going to be about, if you really put all of this together, that's like close to $5,000, to be honest, in value. But our course, the regular price is 1,699 Canadian dollars. And if you do sign up in advance, that becomes just 14.99 Canadian or 12.99 US. And I know many of you are considering your return on investment. This is an investment. This is not a cost. You're investing in your own future, in your higher probability of getting into a business school. So to put things in a perspective, getting into your business, your dream business school earlier, a year earlier, getting with perhaps a higher entrance scholarship, that's what can give you a lot of return on investment. So we find that the GMAT, and especially a quality GMAT course like this, gives you a lot of return on investment, because you're going to be able to see firstly, the more immediate return on investment in the form of an entrance scholarship, and it's going to be a longer term return on investment if you, let's say, finish your MBA sooner or go to a more prestigious, a higher competition school. Like I mentioned, we do offer a full guarantee that we are going to be working with you until you are done, until that time that you are done. So you can find these offers. Now, for some of you, it might not be practical to join our live course. It is our flagship option. It's still very affordable comparing to some of the other options that are available from other companies, other test prep companies. But our company has been around for over 20 years. So we've done this for a very long time, and we are specifically teaching the 700 plus score. But there are some options as well that are more affordable, that are more self-paced with less instructor interaction. So just to wrap up, and I'm going to pass control now in just a couple of minutes to my colleague Teresa, who's going to share with you these strategies to get in outside of the GMAT. I wanted to show you really quickly a real GMAT question, now a quant GMAT question. Take a look Take 15 seconds to read it, and I'll show you a couple of different ways of doing it. Okay, so many people, when they read this question for the first time, they say, wait a second, let me read it again. Right? And if I, usually in the live class, if I wait until everybody finished reading and really understands it, sometimes I will wait for 5 minutes. Well, wait till you see the answer choices. They're even better than the question itself. All these variables makes the question quite confusing. Now, if you have an engineering background, especially from countries where the engineering is really strong or a mastering is strong, you could be okay writing a couple of formulas and getting this question done. But for most of us, mere mortals, who perhaps don't have that strong math background, here's how we normally do this question. We would just say, okay, I remember distance equal to rate times time. I'm being asked for the distance, how many miles from home. And then I know the total time that this person was jogging and walking, but the two different speeds, the speed for jogging and the speed for walking, X and Y. So I know that I can calculate the distance from home, the distance back home, the times together are going to be T, the distances are the same. And I know that then I can build a couple of equations. And honestly, after 5 minutes, most people just give up because we're not getting super close to where we need to be. So is there a different way of doing this question? Absolutely. That's a more conceptual way, right? We call it conceptual math. So how do we do this? We know the distance equal to rate times time. And formula is good, but this is common sense. If I'm driving at 50 kilometers an hour for 2 hours, I know I'm going to be at 100 kilometers. I'm not going to be at like 52 or 50 minus 2, which is 48. I know I just need to multiply them and I get the distance. We all do this when we drive every day. Now, if you look at the answer choices, you would notice that not all answer choices actually multiply them. Answer choice B tries to add speed and time. It's kind of like saying 50 kilometers an hour, 2 hours, well, I'm at 52. 52 what? So B is definitely wrong. D, same thing. E, same thing. So now, by just simply using common sense, that unfortunately isn't that common, but that's what we'll rediscover when we're studying for the GMAT, we will realize, well, wait, I'm down to 2 answer choices. And of them, only one could be right. So let me test one and see if it's right. I'm going to look at A. Answer choice A gives me miles an hour divided by miles an hour, which is a ratio of 2 speeds, and that's multiplied by hours. So the result is going to be in hours, but I need miles. Therefore, I know A is not going to be right. And C is the only one that's left. We again use the process elimination. We can do this in 30 seconds. We call this the mastery way. Sometimes we call it the conceptual way. The mastery is more of a general approach. Most specifically here, we're using the conceptual way of doing the question. And we specifically use a dimensional analysis, which is a little outside of what most of us learned in high school. Now, going back to those average scores, well, the average score in the GMAT is 560, as I'm sure you know by now, but the average score of our students who comes through our program is 670. And we like to think that we have the best students in the world. And that's partially true because we don't just accept everybody in our class, but the idea is also that if you learn the strategies that will help you win on the test and you practice them and you get ready and you take the test when you're ready, you will get a good score. And approximately 1 in 3 people will get scores of 700 or more. Now, for some people, it might take a long time. For example, for Fionn, it took her 7 months. She starts from not a high score. She's a nurse. She works 4 jobs. And it took her about 7 months to get a score of 760. But hey, you know what? That's worth it. And in fact, when she called me to tell me how happy she was about her score, she said, I really enjoyed the process as well. And I just thought that I'll keep going until I'm done. Brian, on the contrary, had just 6 weeks and he wasn't working any jobs at that time. He said, I have a 2 months gap before I start a new job and I got to study right now. Start from 570. really put his head down, worked about 35, 40 hours a week, got a score of 760, literally just days after finishing our 6-week course. And he's now been admitted to his dream school. He actually lives in the United States, so he's been admitted to one of the schools there, one of the top 7 schools. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to learn about the application process. And I wanted to really invite you to think seriously about what's most important to you in life. And if getting into a business school and taking your career to the next level is really important, I would really love to invite you to connect with us, connect with Teresa, join our classes. You can join our full training program, which is really going to be the best value, but it will prepare you for the 700 plus score. If you're just looking for some tidbits, but you're not yet ready to join the full program, you can join our Master Refresher class, which is going to be next weekend, where we'll talk about the math theory in a little more detail. If you want to just try the GMAT exam, you can go to trygmat.com and try it out. It's completely free. It is the service that we provide for free. And you can find all of that at admitmaster.com/offer. So I'd like to invite you to, again, think seriously about what is it that you want to do in life and connect with us if you are serious, and we'll be glad to help you along the way. Now, because the GMAT is just a part of the application, I'd like to now invite you to hear what else is really required, because even if you get a really, really high score on the GMAT, but your application isn't strong, most likely you're not going to get in. And sometimes you could get in with a slightly lower score if your application is very strong. So what else is required? Well, let's hear this from Teresa. Please welcome my colleague from the Smith School of Business, who's going to share with you some amazing strategies. I always learn from Teresa, even though I've heard her presentation many times. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Teresa.
Thank you, Sergey. I too, from you. It's always great to be part of these sessions, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to walk you through some tips. I like to share some high-level tips and then drill down a little bit in regards to the tips that I've provided. Of course, this is going to be from my lens. I've been doing this now for 10 years. I am the Associate Director of Recruitment and Admissions. Please keep in mind that it is always prudent to ensure you're reaching out to the specific schools that you're interested in, as there may be some nuances to their admissions processes that are slightly different to what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I've jotted down my contact information here on LinkedIn. If you do want to reach out, don't hesitate to do so. I'm always happy to hear from you. So the tips that I've listed here are the top 5 tips for candidates at your stage, looking at ways that you can best apply, or the journey at the beginning of the cycle in terms of looking for ways to improve your profile and how you can essentially stand out. So my number 1 tip is always reach out early. So it's important that you connect with the admissions directors like myself to just start the conversation. At the end of the day, we're not scary people. We're here to assist and guide you, as is someone like Sergey with a prep company like assisting you with the GMAT. We're really here to give you the resources and the tools to ensure your success. Okay, so reaching out early is really key. And you can do that in multiple ways. Direct email. You can also check out our ambassadors on our student page. That's always a great way to connect with students directly, as well as through LinkedIn, so social media platforms as well. Take advantage of a preliminary assessment. So almost every business school out there will offer you an opportunity to submit your resume, unofficial transcripts, English proficiency tests, whatever that they require at the front end of the cycle or the pipeline, to really just get to know you. Every program is going to look for different things, but it is important that you understand how you can initially enhance your profile. So that's really the purpose of the preliminary assessment, is just to review your current profile and then give you tips and guidance on how to improve that if it's necessary to do so. But it also gives you a boost of confidence in many ways, as often candidates are submitting their resume thinking that they're just not strong enough to apply to a top MBA program like ours. And the reality is that, every school takes a very holistic approach to recruiting. You may not have, strength in maybe leadership, or maybe you don't have the strongest GMAT or GRE score, but this is where we can tell you at the front end and early in the cycle what you need to do to improve those things in your application. And third is find your fit. So you want to learn about the school, you want to understand the culture of the institution, you want to see if this is ultimately going to be a place that you want to invest your time, energy, and money. So I always recommend just doing some, low-hanging fruit stuff, like going onto the website, going onto our social media platforms, and then of course speaking with current students. I know that it might be it might be your inclination to reach out to alumni initially, but my advice is actually to speak to those that are going through the program currently, because every program goes through changes year over year. And although it's important to see yourselves in the alumni successes, it's also important to understand if the institution currently in today's reality is a place that you want to ultimately study. So it's important to reach out to the current students to hear from their perspective live and on the ground, how they're enjoying the program and ultimately why they chose the program. The fourth is going to be understanding who you are beyond your CV, so beyond your resume, beyond your work accomplishments. Most of us as admissions directors are looking for you to present yourself true and authentic. And the ways in which we can learn this about you is, of course, through your resume, but also going back to tip number one, reach out early, get to know us, build a relationship with us, and then we can really advise and guide you. We'd like to see things like extracurriculars, for example. If you have volunteer experience, if you've sat on a board, if you are working for, in a space that's of interest to you, in a passion project, those are the types of things that we like to see on your resume and that we like you to tell us about, because this is what ultimately you're bringing to the table when you enter our MBA program. It's not just about your promotions and your work experience, although that is great. It's also about who you are as a person, what experiences you've had, and ultimately your accomplishments throughout your career prior to starting the MBA. So we want to know that entire journey in all things that make up you. So those passion projects, those interests, that volunteer experience, all of that is equally as important as just what you've done in your career. So keep that in mind and ensure that you're including those things on your resume. And lastly, apply when you're most prepared. So, having these conversations early, connecting with someone like Sergey to really prepare for that GMAT is critical in a number of ways. It can definitely help you on the scholarship side of things. So I know Sergey touched on that. Having a strong GMAT plays into the entire rubric, if you will, of what we're assessing, and quantitative abilities in both your GPA, so what you've done prior to your career, and then of course proven ability in your GMAT score today is ultimately how you can really secure a very strong scholarship. And so I'm just going to break this down over the next couple of minutes for you. So ultimately, you want to understand, okay, what is the ideal MBA candidate? How do we assess you? I talked about a rubric, and that, of course, plays into the intellectual horsepower in your quantitative abilities. So GMAT and GPA are critical. They are important. They are something we assess, but we're also looking at other aspects of your profile. So the work ethic, that resiliency piece. If you have any gaps on your resume, talk to us about why. You may want to include that in, the interview process. You may also want to explain that as you're building that relationship with your application advisor. So all of these things can be noted in your profile before you move to the admissions committee stage. The interpersonal skills are assessed in a couple of ways. Of course, in that building relationship, that journey throughout applying to business school, but also ultimately in what your references are saying. So you want to make sure you're choosing references that are going to know you and know your skills and abilities, but also be able to speak to that sort of behavioral side that we feel is so critical and important. And lastly, the coachability and team experience. So we are a team-based MBA. We really believe in the importance of strong communication, critical thinking skills, conflict management, resolution skills. So this can be assessed through what you've done, but ultimately, this is what you're going to be learning in an MBA program like ours. And so we want to see that proven ability. can also be seen in things like, again, those passion projects or that extracurricular activity that you bring to the table. The culture at Queen's, so we talked about this in finding your fit. So in those initial tips, you want to make sure that you're going to the websites, but you're also digging a little bit deeper, speaking to current students, understanding what the school is doing outside of just these landing pages. So really get some information around, what is important to you. So building that on your own, and then looking at this in relation to how it fits with what we offer as a school. And of course, reaching out to our application advisors, we can always connect you with current students, but we also do have an easy to follow tab where you can connect with ambassadors live and on the spot. And then overall, we're assessing your qualifications. So again, beyond your CV, we're looking at the entire profile holistically. So how we assess you is listed here. The cover letter, resume, of course, are going to be initial pieces that we can assist you with. Connecting with the application advisors is quite simple. You just complete that online form on our website. It is, in fact, a preliminary assessment. It does begin your application, but there is no obligation, and ultimately there is no fee to apply to our program. So you can go ahead and complete that online form at any point in time, and then we walk you through these steps or these qualifications. You can see here that the quantitative and the qualitative pieces are merged together in how we assess you. There are no written essays. We do require some video components to be complete. And this is really, again, another piece of how we assess you personally, how we identify how quickly and concisely you can formulate an answer. And then you do have up to 10 minutes for a short written response. Again, these are all behavioral types of questions. And if all looks good, then we will move you to the interview. And in most cases, you are invited to interview at schools wherein you have to complete these steps, and then we reach back out to you. So there is a process that you do need to prepare, of course, to ensure you're putting your best foot forward. And I feel like we do a great job at having that application advisor build that relationship with you, which is so critical to ensure, again, that you're providing the strongest profile possible before you move into that interview stage of the application. So just quick facts about us as I close out here. We are a 12-month MBA. We begin in January each year. We have a relatively small cohort. So again, we do drill down into each of your individual profiles, understanding what you bring to the table, looking at the GMAT score, looking at your undergraduate grades, and of course the degree. We want to see diversity in that. We have very strong female representation year over year, over 35% consistently over the last 5 cycles. We do have scholarships specific for women as well. So keep that in mind and check out our website for the finance and fees tab, where you can find all of the details about the cost of our program and, of course, our scholarships. There is an 85% employment last year, which is fantastic in a pandemic year. We're thrilled with that. And we were at 95% 6 months after graduation. This speaks to our career coaching abilities and the resources and support that you get throughout our program. We are an all-inclusive fee, so all cases, textbooks, and materials are included in the cost of our tuition, and there is no deadline. We're on rolling admissions. So again, I've included my contact information here. Please keep in mind that you can reach out to me at any point in time. Start a preliminary assessment. That is ultimately going to be your first step. Understanding, of course, what upcoming events we have, just going to our website. This, again, gives you that ultimate sense of what we offer as a school and who we are. Going back to that finding your fit, you can schedule a virtual coffee chat with myself or one of our student ambassadors, and then, of course, connect with us virtually at any point in time. These are really great highlights of the program. I go through it very quickly, but ultimately, going back to what's important, which is you want to make sure that you're choosing a program that's going to provide you the tips and resources and guidance to be successful at the end of the day. And just to reiterate what those are is reach out early, connect with us. You want to take advantage of a preliminary assessment, no obligation, no fee, find your fit, So again, understand the culture of that institution, and then really think about this journey and what you want to get out of it. So understanding who you are, your motivation for this MBA. So going beyond just your career accomplishments, and really understanding, what this MBA means to you, and how you can take it to that next career level or goal that you're looking to pursue. And then lastly, apply when you're most prepared. Okay, work with Sergey and his team to secure that strong GMAT score to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward. So again, rolling admissions, finding your fit. You can follow us on any of these social media channels. I want to thank you for your time. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for sharing this. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We have about 5 minutes left, so if you have any questions, then please put them in the chat box or put them in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer them. Most importantly, please connect with us. We'll be following up with you by email. We'll send you an email with our contact information for myself and for Teresa, so you can always connect with us. I know that it happens with me all the time when I go to a seminar, and I still go to many different seminars and workshops. Sometimes when the seminar is over, as soon as it's over, I think of a question that I forgot to ask. So if you're like me, then please send us an email and we'll be happy to help. There's a question from somebody: how does Miss compensate for the internship component for career switcher? So I guess maybe a greater question is, given that the 12 months program doesn't really include an internship, how could somebody who would like to switch a career take advantage of this program and be successful in their journey?
Great question. Yes, there's often the deliberation, if you will, over 1 year versus 2 year programs. And it ultimately depends on, in my opinion, how quickly you want to complete your MBA, how long you want to be out of the workforce when you think about return on investment and opportunity costs. The 1 year programs in Canada do offer you the highest return on your investment. And ultimately, what it means is that we just provide enhanced level of career support to ensure that you're making that transition seamlessly. We see 97% of our students make career transitions, either pivots in industry or complete function changes. So it is absolutely possible, and we see that year over year. The reality is that it's really around your skills and abilities. It's not necessarily what you were doing prior to, but what is your capabilities and what is your proven aptitude for moving into that different role or sector ultimately. We do provide project-based courses where you are getting hands-on experience to work with SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises, in some of those spaces that you might want to move into. So finance, consulting opportunities. We do also have new specializations in management analytics and in digital transformation, which we are finding is very helpful for our students that want to move into those tech spaces. So we do ensure that our electives are really quite robust in the courses that you're taking, that experiential learning opportunities that you do get. So I would say that those robust project-based courses really ultimately help outweigh the fact that we don't have an internship. And my advice to you is just simply look at the employment report statistics for the schools that you're interested in applying to. And that'll tell a brighter picture, if you will, around employability and success coming out of a 1 year program.
Yes, you're right. Thank you, Teresa. And I just want to echo, we do have a lot of our clients who go to Smith, and many of them would switch their careers. And sometimes they would switch careers quite drastically. We had a nurse recently who joined Smith, then joined consulting, now works for private equity. So it is quite common. And indeed, there are a lot of, there's a lot of support, because especially being part of a smaller program, you get a lot more attention. There was a question about success in placing grads in private equity, venture capital sphere, given Queen's strong finance hold. Well, maybe I can say from my own side, most of the programs will say they're strong in finance because they, especially in Canada, this is one of the industries that's the most developed. But I also know a lot of people who don't work in finance. In fact, I know way more people who don't get into finance, but get into other industries as well. So perhaps, Teresa, you could comment on this as well. I think that's maybe a little bit of a misconception that I had before, that a lot of people after MBA go to finance, and I have my own MBA, and I know many of us did not actually get into finance, but mostly for choice, because finance jobs are plentiful, but there are lots of other jobs available.
Absolutely. And really comes down to functions. So there's lots of different spaces our students that want to move into finance actually go. Some of them go into sort of boutique firms, investment management, investment banking, private equity, and some of them just go into rotational programs at the bank. So there's such a wide range of different functions that one can do coming out of a finance specialization, let's say. But specifically in the VC space, I think that we offer something very unique compared to any other MBA program. We do have what's called a tricolor fund. So it does give students the ability to actually work directly with venture capitalists. And this is such a unique opportunity wherein a student can either work individually or in pairs and invest up to $500,000. So this is something that gives you that, again, that experiential learning or hands-on tangible opportunity over the last 6 months of the program. And you can find more information about it. It's called Tricolor Fund. Again, it's specific to those interested in the VC world. And then we do see students, smaller numbers, I would say, specifically in PE, but we do see them land in those roles coming out of the MBA. Primarily in Toronto, we do have candidates at Bond Capital, for example, in PE, and in Vancouver. So again, our employment report will actually break this down and give you much more information in regards to the specific functions and industries our students are moving into. But at a high level, very traditionally coming out of an MBA, I will say finance and consulting, right? Those are the two major buckets, if you will, that MBAs still traditionally tend to move into. But it is shifting, more tech space, healthcare, startup. So we'll see a big shift, I think, in the next 5 years or so.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I don't see any other questions, and I know the time is now 1:01. So if you have any questions in the future, please reach out. Again, like I mentioned, we will be following up with you later this afternoon, and Teresa's contact information and my contact information will be in the email. So please reach out at any time. And thanks again for joining us. Good luck with your applications. Let us know if we can help with anything, and please stay in touch.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sergey. Pleasure. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.